Very good afternoon, everybody. If you're in South Africa, of course, if you're in other areas of the world, it may be morning or evening. But it is 12:30 here in South Africa, which means it's time for another Live at the Waterhole, which we have started at Lindor in Kenya with some baboons and it seems some slightly nervous impalas. My name's Ben Coley. I'll be with you for the next 2 hours as we will be watching hopefully some fantastic interactions and get some great sightings from all of our cameras across the continent. It's live, it's interactive, it's Tuesday, I think. Better just check that. Yep, Tuesday, the 8th of July. So please do send in questions, comments, what you're up to, where you're from, what you would like to know about, any thoughts on what we are seeing, and it will be fabulous to hear from you. But what a lovely troop of baboons. They are always so entertaining to watch. Say, I was in the park the other day and actually took great pleasure at one point on a little side road in Kruger on a Saturday. It was very quiet, didn't see another car, which is unusual for a Saturday, and actually sat for quite a long time watching the antics of a troop of baboons, some youngsters grooming each other, playing around, having a bit of rough and tumble in the middle of the road. There is something so appealing about baboons. I think we can all relate to them to some extent. Let's see what we get up to here. Bit of palm reading. Beautiful big male, this one here at the front. And look at these youngsters having a drink. He's got a splinter or something in his hand. Keeps investigating in there. Had a little nibble at it before. We've all suffered from splinters, and I suppose if you are climbing around in trees, particularly thorny trees sometimes, it is inevitable. I imagine that they have incredibly tough skin on their soles of their feet and on the palms of their hand, but I've no doubt that a misplaced grip could lead to some discomfort. These are believed to be olive baboons, which you get up in East Africa, along with the yellow baboon. Those are the two options. Of course, different from our chakma baboons here. I always find these ones to be a little bit more furry, a bit more fluffy, which is strange considering they are more equatorial, where the temperatures should be more stable and hot. I think the ones down here that have to deal with a harsher winter climate would have, look at this one peering into the camera, would have longer fur, but I suppose regional differences. I see we've had a few greetings come through. Mercedes Bean, greetings to you. And I've got Nadine in my ear, and of course, all the wonderful Zoomies and tech minded folk who make these shows possible. Hello, Joanne Mello. You're saying an awesome way to start with baboons. Rafael K. Maseko, loving the view, as I'm sure that was quite amusing to see that one baboon peering into the camera. And Raw, you're saying you love my analogy of a rhino midden being like a Facebook page. Or that is crux of guiding, and something that all guides should aim for is to take aspects of the ecosystem, regardless of what they are discussing, and try and make it understandable, make it relatable. I spend a lot of time trying to um, suggest that, particularly when I'm doing my astronomy based training, where we're taking let's be honest, relatively complicated scientific concepts, breaking them down to their simplest parts and trying to make them more easily understandable for those who don't have any prior knowledge of it. So if you can find a way to relate what you're seeing to a real world example, then that just makes things more relatable and easier for people to understand. Hello, Mr. Elemental. You're joining us from a cold and dark Perth. I suppose it would be nighttime for you, yes. And to here in the southern hemisphere. So it's one of the classic examples that I use from a star perspective. When discussing distances, we often talk a lot about light years, and that is just an inconceivable distance for most of us. I'm almost tempted to ask if anybody knows, but if you could try and break down a light year into kilometers, for example, it suddenly becomes an almost unmanageable distance to understand. Speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second. So imagine if you could travel that distance in 1 second, then imagine how far you could travel in a year. So if you can do 300,000 times 60 times 60 times 24 times 365, you'll end up at the ridiculous figure of 9.5 trillion kilometers. Which, to make it more understandable, would take you about 1.2 million years to fly there by Airbus. That helps people understand the sheer enormity of space. But whether you're talking about space or animals, finding a good way to relate it to your audience is always the key. Like this one at the back, just flopped himself down in a rather unusual pose for a baboon, just belly down on the ground. He's a cute little one. What have you found there, youngster? Something interesting in the water? This one hitching a lift. I love baby baboons, those dark faces and those big ears, these big doleful eyes. Again, looking rather similar to young children. And this one getting a bit of a groom to those parts hard to reach.
I feel it is a rosetted morning for us. So yes, let's see what we can find.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus.
Yaku!
And gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
Out here, every wild moment counts, and as a Wild Earth explorer, you will not miss out. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7, and you can even rewind if you have missed out on something. Enjoy the behind-the-scenes video clips as well as fireside chat, or get the early offers on our travel experiences. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Old Donio, one or multiple bull elephants enjoying that pipe. Lovely texture on this one's skin, whether or not that's just the light, whether that's some particularly crusty mud there on his forehead, but always nice to appreciate the textures of these animals. Of course, we had lots of things happening here when I was doing the show a couple of days ago. We had a very, very large group of zebra. We saw eland, we saw giraffe, we had some warthogs that were upsetting the elephants, strangely more so than the 40 or 50 zebras that came down to try their hand at the drink. It looks like this one has got the waterhole all to himself, for now at least. Very stained tusks this boy has, whether that's from digging in the mud, whether that's caked mud, I'm not sure. Possibly digging up some roots and tubers and things, but having not that long ago come out of the range, you can see there's plenty of vegetation, cloudy skies. I would imagine that's probably from digging rather than anything else, or possibly just wear and tear, maybe some build-up of general gunk on those tusks. It's a good word, gunk, very onomatopoeic. Oh, there's our random female eland, who seems to have been a stalwart of Oldonio of late. Or are you a young boy? Possibly like a young male, which would explain why perhaps he is on his own. Considering his options. Lovely set of spiraling horns, which puts them in the same tribe, as we call it in antelope species, of other spiral horned antelopes such as kudus and bushbucks. Although different from those in that both sexes have horns in the case of eland, which is often the case with animals that are more predominantly grazers, since they spend more time out in the open. Important for the females to be able to protect themselves against predation. Okay, it sounds like we've got some zebras somewhere. I didn't quite catch where, but let's go have a look at some stripes. And back up to or down to Botswana at Moela Lodge. Again, the zebra's going for the paddle approach to having a drink, which we don't often see down here, I'm sure due to fear of crocs, but perhaps have decided that this waterhole is not big enough to harbour too much danger in that regard. But as we always say, do not make assumptions when it comes to the presence of crocodiles. Always assume there is one, unless you can see the floor. Now, Ingrid, I did have a quick look to see if I could find an answer or a proper answer to your question. It seems that there are indeed various diseases that commonly affect baboons. Simian hemorrhagic fever, which doesn't sound very nice, fever, internal bleeding, and organ failure. There's various sort of herpes-based, wow, I can't say that, herpes-based viruses. Baboon endogenous virus, forms of hepatitis. But in terms of things that are transferable to humans, tuberculosis, certainly by the looks of it. Baboons can catch TB from humans and also transfer it back. So these are what we call the zoonotic diseases, which are transferable between a species and humans. What else did I find? Well, there's a herpes B virus. Don't get it in baboons, but macaques apparently do carry it and can be deadly to humans. And some rather unpleasant intestinal parasites, which can also be transferred. And there is some mention of rabies, as I thought it might be, but apparently it's actually relatively rare for baboons to be infected by rabies. But if they were bitten by something that was infected, it can happen. And then, again, as always with rabies, can certainly be transmitted between humans. Interesting to see quite a sort of spread out group of zebras. They normally stay together as quite a tight unit, probably for safety, and generally all come down to drink, but these ones are relatively well spread out. Perhaps it's the open nature of the area led to a little bit of confidence. Lovely to hear their vocalizations in the background. One of my favourite sounds in the bush, the sort of whistling whoop of a zebra. This one keeping a close eye on proceedings. had a question the other day about whether I thought tail movement or tail swishing, whether I thought it was a conscious or unconscious activity that animals engage in. And at the time, I said it was conscious. There'd be muscles connected to it. They can choose to swish their tail, which I'm sure they can. But having discussed it, and in hindsight, I think it is probably more likely that it is more of an unintentional thing. Obviously, it'll respond to stimuli, but in hindsight, I don't think that they consider every swish of the tail. It'll be more reactive to external stimuli. Okay, we've hopped over to Serendella in Thornybush, so part of Greater Kruger. Watching this giraffe trim any remaining leaves off what looks like could be a tambueti tree. You do see giraffes feeding off tambuetis a bit more often during the winter months, not as much during the summer due to the higher latex content, that poison that the tree uses as a defense mechanism. Although some animals, certainly capable, porcupines and things, like to try and ring bark tambueti trees. They seem to be immune from those toxins. There was a theory that I remember reading about quite a long time ago now. I must say I have never really followed up on it, that perhaps one of the benefits of feeding from a poisonous tree for a giraffe, for example, by and intaking a little bit of those toxins, is that it could change the blood and the smells coming off the animal, which might perhaps make it less attractive to ticks. I don't know if that has ever got any more traction within the community, but it was an interesting theory nonetheless. And we've now bounced back up to Oldonyo, doing a whirlwind tour of some of our cameras at the moment.
For years, we've shared virtual wildlife. Now, let's experience it for real. I'm Lauren Arthur, and I'd love to show you my amazing home here in the Greater Kruger of South Africa. This 5-night journey is an exclusive connection to my piece of untamed Africa. I live here in these gorgeous landscapes surrounded by epic wildlife. The wild is calling, so come and join me.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
My name is Takudzwa Panda Msesani. My scariest moment is when it happened twice. The other time I was with Cedric and the other time I was with Steve. And all those times, it was a black mamba. My favorite meal in camp is gonna be burger and chips.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature, live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
We are here with a male leopard.
Having a drink, paddling into the water. What are those in the background? Blessbok, maybe? Quite a fan of this waterhole. I just love the way the angle of the camera is beautiful and really encapsulates that broad open horizon. Some lovely vistas. Jane Ingrid Ludlow again. Sorry, Jane, I forgot your first name last time and just went with Ingrid. I hope you don't mind. You were saying that if you look at an elephant's legs from the side, they seem slightly convex. And does that help with the point of gravity, their sort of balance? I've never really considered it, Jane, but it certainly would make sense. I mean, there's an awful lot of weight to be supported on those four pillars. So rather try and get it equal. Elephants do sleep standing up as well, and those legs are positioned sort of in the four corners of its mass, I suppose. Obviously a lot more on the front legs than the back legs, but that's why the front legs are much larger. The bone structure is larger to take that additional weight. Wow, that is a very pregnant zebra on the left. Yeah, I'm not sure, Jane Ludlow, but it certainly would make sense. So nature's pretty clever, had millions of years to evolve the best positioning of those legs. So when you're supporting multiple tons, it would make sense to not put undue pressure on the skeletal and muscular structure. Looks like quite a breezy day in Botswana. A lot of vegetation swirling around. Zebras do give birth throughout the year. There'll be a peak during the summer months, but see, that zebra also looked pregnant with both of those females. I always feel sorry for the youngsters who are going to arrive into the world this time of year. It's going to be a tough start, certainly. Still amazes me how these animals can survive the winter months, even where we are here. We've got zebras and other grazing animals in the estate that I live in, and there is no green grass anywhere. It's amazing that they are able to extract sufficient nutrition from what they're eating. Spars, I don't think we've ever observed a zebra live birth on camera. Whether or not these cameras, these African cameras, are generally running 24 hours a day, so it may have been captured, but I don't think it's ever happened. The live birth of any animal on these cameras, maybe an impala perhaps, since there are so many of them, during that very specific time when they do give birth, from sort of November, December time. I'd be interested to hear if anyone has seen it happen live on camera, but it's not something you see very often. Normally does happen in relatively say shaded areas, but well protected areas, thicker vegetation. And so you're asking what are the signs of a pregnant zebra? To be honest, Bess, I've just looked at the general shape of the stomach, the distended abdomen. A pregnant zebra, the stomach hangs a little bit lower. If seen from the side, it is wider in appearance. It's got a large foal stuffed in there. So the difference between one that's a few months pregnant, then I don't think we'd be able to tell, but a heavily pregnant zebra you can certainly see just with the way that the body has changed. They are pregnant for best part of a year, of course, so it is quite a slow process, but a very developed foal that emerges. So we've come back to our giraffe at Serendella. But always worth checking. Zebras are relatively plump or rotund when you look at them at the best of times, just because of that hindgut fermentive digestive system that does create a lot of gas as a byproduct. So you're unlikely to see a particularly skinny zebra. Just the way the digestion works often means they do look a little bit more swollen, and it's why they do produce quite a lot of gas. Particularly when fleeing from something or running at high speeds, they often punctuate their departure with some audible cues, shall we say. Mercedes Ben, you're saying we had a live birth, Tammy's fourth cub. We did indeed, and I saw that. That was April the 30th. Thank you, Mercedes Ben. Yeah, I hadn't considered that one. I don't know if I suppose it does count in terms of a camera, but obviously in more of a captive environment. There at the Hotspur Endangered Species Centre. This giraffe definitely does seem to be sort of flitting between the tambuiti trees. It's quite an amazing process, that production of that toxin, and the way that the tambuiti benefits from it in what is a form of antibiosis called allelopathy, whereby the toxins that tree creates to defend itself against browsing, those toxins also leach into the soil. They increase the acidity of the soil in and around the tambuiti tree, which prevents a lot of other trees from growing in that area, which is a brilliant way to remove competition. There's only a finite amount of water and nutrients in the soil, so if you can dominate your area and make it less attractive to other plants, then you have a lot more for yourself. Not the only way, of course, that trees are able to manipulate their surroundings, as it were. One that springs to mind is the sour plums, the Ximenia genus, that also occur here in South Africa. They are sort of semi-parasitic or hemiparasitic when they are young, and a young sour plum will sort of send out a specialized root. It's called a haustorium. Same we find in mistletoes and other hemiparasitic plants, and that root will actually, I suppose you could say, bore into the root system of a neighboring tree and actually start siphoning out some of those nutrients and moisture, just to give that young sour plum a bit of a kickstart in life. I'm not sure whether they do it throughout their lives. I know they do it as young trees. I suppose it makes sense if you can do it throughout your life. It makes life a lot simpler. Mundler from Johannesburg, you're asking whether it's true that baboons close their eyes when drinking from a waterhole. Mundler, I don't know. I've never actually looked. I don't think so. I would have thought that when they're down drinking, if anything, as with most animals, they will be highly alert because they are in a more vulnerable position. So I would have thought that they do keep them open, but if I'd have seen your question earlier, we could have checked when we were at Lentor. Maybe we'll have another opportunity to do so. Flitting between the cameras again, we've come to Simbavati Waterside. I'm actually going to be there next week. So nice to see some giraffe.
This unfolds in front of you.
My name is Takudzwa Panda Msesani. I really want to film an artwork, and it has been my goal. I'll be just keeping my eyes open. The worst driver is Jen. He's driving. Yeah, you gotta be holding on back in there, yeah? Like in bumps, and I mean, it happens when these things happens when you're actually going for animals usually. But then, yeah, he's driving. Yeah, you gotta put your seatbelt.
Step away from your daily stress and escape into nature with Wild Earth. Immerse yourself in the wilderness and become part of the natural landscape. Watch as everything comes alive. Join us as we slow down our thoughts, put aside our distractions, and reconnect with the wild.
If you love watching Wild Earth, here's a little tip. You'll gain access to the channel ad-free. You can rewind and rewatch sightings and gain access to our live Tuesday safaris. There's also behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and every safari live episode, whenever it suits you. It's just the best way to connect with nature.
Speaking of feet, I have been doing my usual little bit of reading to try and find some interesting factoids to give you, and discovered a lizard that we get in, now where is it? I think it's in North America somewhere. It's called a wandering salamander that lives up in the trees and jumps from branch to branch and potentially even from tree to tree, and they have rather red feet, particularly on the underside of their toes. They have really sort of square-shaped toes. They're rather strange. And for a long time it was thought that was to increase blood flow, to increase the efficiency of those feet. But it has recently been discovered that it can actually control the blood pressure or the amount of blood being sent through to those feet, which causes those toes to expand and contract, allowing them to form better grip. So apparently when they're about to launch themselves off a branch, they will send more blood down to their toes. That causes them to expand, reduces the surface contact so that they can get a good spring and a good push off. And then when they land, they take some of the blood pressure away, or take some of the blood out of that toe to make it a little bit more soft, so that when they land, it molds itself better around the contours of the tree, into the little fissures and things in between the bark, increase the surface area and therefore grip. So that was a pretty cool adaptation. You can cause your toes to swell and contract to give you better traction whilst clambering around in the branches. Cat Fan, you're saying baby rhinos are impossibly cute. I could not agree more. Little baby rhinos remind me of warthogs, and I love the fact that their feet always look far too big for their bodies. They look like they've got someone strapped some dinner plates to their feet as they're waddling around, and they bounce as well. They run around and they're more agile than you would think, as are the adults for that matter. But the youngsters have these little bursts of energies, almost like rhino zoomies. I worry that they're going to stumble over their own feet at some point. Okay, but that's very, very special. But sounds like, wow, look at all those giraffe. I've just told that there were plenty of giraffe. That is indeed plenty of giraffe. Here are the inquisitive male. Oh no, I thought the male at the back was going to go and investigate the one to the right just off screen, but it seems not. Spuss, you were just mentioning, interesting how giraffes and tambuti trees have evolved together. You're saying so that only giraffes can feed on the tree. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I've seen kudus and other antelope species feeding on tambuti trees as well, but say generally you see it happen a lot more during the winter months, so when the leaves are drying out and therefore there is less in terms of that latex or toxin laced latex in the leaf. And you're asking about termites. I assume you're asking whether termites also feed on the tambuti. I'm sure they do. I can't say 100% one way or the other, Spuss, but I should remember termites generally only dead wood, or the majority of the species that we get out here. So even though we wouldn't burn tambuti because of the smell and the potential toxins that are still in the wood, I'm pretty sure that I've seen termite damage on dead tambutis as well. So maybe they do have the necessary digestive enzymes to deal with that. But remember, their digestion is basically external. They're just eating it and then taking it back to their mounds and then allowing the fungus to do the digesting for them in the case of the fungus growing termites, of course. Okay, that was a whole load of giraffes, but back up to Oldonyo in Kenya. Our one elephant has doubled, and we have had the addition of another giraffe and some zebras as well. Okay, seeing as we are at or in Kenya at the moment on this camera, it's probably a good opportunity to remind you about one of our Wild Earth travel trips coming up next year, 9th to the 18th of June. We've got Kenya's Black Leopard Safari up to the Masai Mara and to Laikipia, which will be guided by our very own Steve Falconbridge. And of course, Laikipia means a chance to see the rare black leopard. So you can stay at the offbeat Mara camp for more of a classic safari experience in an incredibly rich wildlife area. Expect to see the big five and a whole load of other species whilst you're up there. But it is only a group size of 6, so if you are keen, there is only a very limited availability to take that wonderful trip with Steve. Great opportunity for true wildlife enthusiasts, so do contact Wild Earth Travel as per what you just saw there on the screen, and book your spot now before it is too late. And plus, I'm glad that you are enjoying the elephants, giraffe and zebra at Old Donyo. It's certainly been quite a few of those of late. Zebras, not quite sure if they're comfortable drinking in such proximity to a bathing elephant. So, seems pretty relaxed and chilled and tolerant of these zebras at the moment. Yeah, well, it seems we've had a nice change of scenery. We have headed right the way down to the Western Cape to Stony Point for some of our ocean views and some Cape cormorants. One busy drying out his feathers, probably returned from a trip out into the ocean, diving down looking for some fish, because they can go quite far down and they'd lack that very oily covering that many water birds have to streamline them, so they have to spread their wings and dry out a little bit in the sun. And possibly used as balance whilst waddling across those uneven surfaces. It's always nice to see and hear the ocean. A lot of people gravitate towards the ocean. I enjoy the ocean, but I'm not exactly a beach person. I've got a finite tolerance level for sitting on a beach without doing something. I can read a book for a while, but I will normally end up digging a hole or building a sandcastle or rerouting some water that's flowing. I like to keep myself busy. That's why I enjoy the bush so much, so I can identify things, find out information. I remember going snorkeling down in Sodwana Bay many years ago, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but within about half an hour I decided I knew nothing about all these beautiful fish that I was seeing, so it took about an hour's walk into town and managed to find myself a little book on sort of reef fishes of the area. Brought it back and then proceeded to tick off all the fish that I could find. But I think that's something about, maybe it's the guiding mentality. We do like a list. We like to understand and know what we're looking at. Joanne Mello, I'm glad that you are enjoying Stony Point.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
full name is Maxine Gaines. Most people that know me really well call me Max. I'm a mum. I have 2 boys. One is 16 years old and one is 14 years old. I'm a very, very proud mama of my 2 boys. I've just always been passionate about leopards. I'm passionate about their conservation. I'm just passionate about everything to do with leopards. I love them.
Oh, that's interesting. That zebra's got more of a sort of a shadow stripes going on that we don't normally see in zebras from these parts. Maybe that one took a holiday from southern Africa and migrated north. Indeed, Nadine, maybe he should have booked his trip through Wild Earth Travel. It would have been even better, I'm sure. Maybe it came up hoping to see the black leopard, but just came a year early. Nice the way that the mane has spread out there, the arch of the neck. There seems to be more sort of concentrated around the black areas of the stripes, giving it a sort of a punk Mohican spiky effect. And a lovely little cocked left leg there, very beautiful. Oxpecker, are you going to have a drink or are you taking a chance? Oh, careful, one's got trodden on. Thought maybe he's going to pick at some ticks that maybe have attached themselves low down by the hock there. Okay, we had a brief visit to Simavati and now back to Camelthon. I thought there would be a large amount of hippos somewhere. Looks like they've all been racing into the water for some reason. Don't know if something disturbed them. I don't see anything. Thundering of, I don't really think we can call them. Ah, maybe that's why. People. Yes, we don't need to see people. Let's go back to old Donyo. It's always interesting if you see some unusual behaviour like that. There's normally a stimulus that has caused it. Cat fan, you're saying you've never really appreciated the patterns on a zebra's legs. You think they're rather pretty. They are. The entire stripe pattern is really very, very striking. So it's such a unique thing that nature has come up with, and it really is beautiful. And the diversity, everyone being slightly different. I rather like, say, my favourite bits. Maybe I like triangles or diamonds, but I love the bit there at the top of the front leg. You can see that forms that sort of triangular pattern as the legs join with the trunk and with the neck. But my favourite part of the zebras are the way that the main hair follows on from the stripe pattern. And I just love, there we go, that beautiful diamond shape on the face as well, from the forehead out to the eyes and back down to the muzzle. Very visually appealing. It's interesting, this one's got some slightly uneven stripes, whether that's a scar that's healed. I guess it probably is. You often do see that if a zebra has had a nasty injury. When the skin heals, the stripes no longer line up properly. You're right there, dude. Yeah, it looks like a little a cutting and pasting that went wrong. Some poor Photoshop management, like one of those cut and shut cars that you used to get, or probably still do. Nice to see the youngster there still with a little bit of that fluffier brown hair visible. Interesting how they've sort of separated into little groups, whether or not these are individual harems. Oh, look at this little one. Are you sleepy? I bet everybody just taking a moment around midday to have a relax. Does look a bit dozy, doesn't he? But so loving the fluffy coppery colour, that sheen coming through those stripe patterns. Yeah, looks like everybody just taking a moment at the moment. Maybe a little lull in proceedings, about time for another factoid. This time coming to you from Hawaii, and a species of caterpillar which is rather unusual that has been found because it is a carnivorous caterpillar, and carnivorous caterpillars account for 0.1% of caterpillars discovered thus far worldwide, or 0.13% to be specific. And this one caught my interest because it's known as the bone collector caterpillar. Now, down here in southern Africa, and I'm sure elsewhere, we have what we call the bag moths or the bag worms, which are uh, moths where the female never actually emerges from her sort of cocoon that she makes for herself. She makes kind of a sleeping bag, which she then camouflages, depending on the species, with either little pieces of wood or with grains of sand, grains of soil, sometimes with acacia thorns, but creates this little thing within which she lives, and she moves around dragging it behind her. She pupates inside there, although she never actually emerges. The youngsters, when she has babies, she dies in there, and the babies kind of eat their way out. Mating occurs from within that sleeping bag as well. But this one, this bone collector caterpillar, actually creates itself sort of a camouflage sac using remains of insects that they find in spider webs. So they're associated with spiders, and when the spider is not looking, they go out and they take any of the stuff that they can find, they feed on it, and then they stick parts of the exoskeleton and the wings onto their body, we assume, as some form of camouflage. And it seems that they're not bothered by the spiders, whether or not that's because there's some sort of unknown relationship between the two of them, or perhaps the spiders feel the vibrations of that moth climbing onto their webs, but when they catch up with it, they smell the fact that it smells of dead insects, because that's what's that's why having a scratch. That's distracting. So it seems they're not predated upon by the spider, and it is thought possibly because they smell and look like pieces of dead insect, and therefore of no interest to the spider. But what was interesting, I thought, that they've discovered that genetically they seem to be older than the Hawaiian Islands that they are found in, suggesting that they actually came from elsewhere and ended up there. But yeah, go check out the bone collector caterpillar.
I met this remarkable rhino bull, whose name is Samson, last year in a place of extraordinary beauty, history and story. I'm going back there to see him in October, and I think you should come with me to his mysterious mountain fastness.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Whoop! Woo! This is action-packed.
My full name is Maxine Gaines. Best part of the job, gosh, I just love everything about guiding. I love being able to observe animal behavior and animals behaving naturally. So for me, that's by far the best part of the job. And so what we do here at Wild Earth is develop those connections with the people that are viewing, and maybe just light a little spark that says, you know what, I want to be involved in protecting this ecosystem.
Out here, every moment counts. As a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7 and rewind if you want to catch something again. Enjoy behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and early access to travel offers. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Zoom in and have a closer look at it. Just favouring that leg. I didn't notice when it walked in whether it was limping. I don't remember seeing an obvious limp, but certainly the way it just held its leg up there suggests it's a little uncomfortable. Definitely is swollen. It'll be interesting to see how he fares with drinking, with the amount of stress and strain that's going to be put on that knee joint. Does look a little unstable, whether that was just a genuine stumble or whether we put too much pressure onto that one leg and it gave way slightly. Kibbeth, you're saying that the bone collector caterpillar reminds you of vulture bees. Fascinating but horrific. I don't know what vulture bees are, Kibbeth, but I will most definitely be having a look into them. I like these weird and wonderful things. There's so much happening that we don't know too much about. Right, let's have a look if this giraffe turns, if we can have a closer look at the leg, but you can certainly see that joint is swollen. I'm going to look at vulture bees right now whilst we see if we can get a better view. Bees that feed on rotting meat. I didn't know such things existed. But certainly a good name for them, also known as carrion bees. Stingless, but now feed on meat. Yeah, very strange sort of protrusion sticking out of the leg. Rather hard to see it clearly, but definitely shouldn't be there, that's for sure. I have no great explanation as to what precisely that would be. I think cyst is the best description I could come up with, certainly. One or two flies buzzing around it. But yeah, I can only assume possibly a nasty injury, maybe a branch or a stick that got stuck in there that's caused an infection and the skin to swell up and form this object. Kevin, you're asking if it could be a variation of that herpes virus that giraffes are susceptible to. Again, I'm no vet, Kevin, but I wouldn't have thought so. That generally in giraffes, I have seen giraffe afflicted with that occasionally. It normally occurs around the head and the neck, and it's much smaller, almost sort of warty protrusions. I would have never seen one that would be that sort of size. and it's more of a sort of affects a large chunk of the skin, but in individual pieces, not great big things hanging off the skin like we're seeing here. Yeah, I would think just some sort of fluid-filled cyst, I would imagine. But that would be my guess, that maybe something's got stuck in the knee joint and caused that to manifest. Cat fan, you're saying, poor thing. Yeah, absolutely. It's horrible when you see animals and things like this. They haven't got doctors that they can go to, and they have to learn to deal with it. But the good news is it doesn't look as if it's limping particularly badly. So I think from a predator avoidance thing, which is obviously his number one concern, finding food, finding water, and avoiding predators, it seems to be able to. I don't think he actually did bend down and have a drink, but that would be my biggest concern if the knee is able to take the pressure, or possibly that has happened because of the pressure being applied to that area due to the stance required for drinking that has sort of forced it to bulge out. Maybe I'm just spitballing a little bit here. Catherine, you were saying we had a giraffe last year that had a piece of wood sticking out of its leg at the same joint. Ah, what it's I vaguely remember that actually, and I suppose it's not impossible that it could be the same individual. Be interesting to see if we've got any footage of that or any screenshots of it where we could compare the patterning and whether or not that's sort of formed around the stick, perhaps. Very interesting. We've got some more zebras this time at Lentor. Trying to think if I've seen zebras at Lentor before. We get a lot of interesting things, bird life, ground squirrels, the baboons often come past. Hopefully we can answer that question about their eyes being closed, but my gut says that that is not the case. Yeah, not often we see zebras having a drink here. Kibith, you're asking if they would call in a vet at Old Donyo to deal with that. Kibith, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, it's always a contentious discussion to have, but the giraffe doesn't seem to be struggling. It's moving around okay. Yes, it's unpleasant, and it would be lovely if they could fix it, but it's always that fine line between doing what we could do and doing what we should do and interfering too much. And so it's a rather harsh way of looking at it, but if that giraffe is not particularly mobile, and if we fixed all the animals that had problems, let's forget the financial ramifications and the potential danger to the animal of having to be tranquilized, the psychological stress, the physiological issues. Of course, many animals don't respond well to tranquilizers. We do lose animals sometimes because the doses won't say the doses are incorrect, but the animal's body reacts to the chemicals in ways that are unexpected. We are also taking away the food that the majority of predators rely upon. Their bread and butter, as it were, is always the old, the young, the sick, the weak, the injured. And if we fixed all the animals, it would make it a lot harder for the predators. And then we'd be sort of back to square one should we be helping the predators find food. So there has to be a point at which we say generally that is nature, and the animal is going to have to deal with it. I know it's unpleasant to watch, and we all wish the animal all the best, but it is a natural system, and we are not there to interfere. Generally speaking, and it differs from reserve to reserve, the standardized policy is man-made problem, man-made answer, natural problem, natural answer. So if an animal was injured by being hit by a car, or was stuck in a fence, or was injured by a snare, then perhaps that would be something that we would get involved with because we as a species have caused that. But if that was indeed, and we're just hypothetically speaking, of course, that the giraffe was running through the bushes and jabbed itself with a stick in the knee, that was nothing to do with us, and as unfortunate as it may be, probably the correct thing to do is to let nature take its course, and animals are always far more resilient than we give them credit for. You see animals with horrific injuries and you think they've got no hope, but a month or two later they're seen showing almost no ill effects. Melanistic marble, you're enjoying the stripy reflection. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? This one looks as if it wants to drink right in the middle. The youngster. He's like, fine, I'll go to one side.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
Would you like to know what an elephant's favorite food is? You could ask me questions like that in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive from the heart of Africa. The Fortunas over here. Watch Safari Live and connect with nature.
Welcome to Safari Spotlight. We'll be
And you pretend like you're a salesman, eh?
Got no idea what's going on this reserve.
Expecting the unexpected.
Are we stuck down there?
What am I trying to do?
Because we have another giant of Mabula.
That was incredible.
This is unbelievable.
It's going to be a spectacular afternoon.
Joanne Miller, you're in Massachusetts and you're saying it's going to be another hot day, 100 degrees expected. So you are going to be keeping you and your cats cool. Good luck. I hope your aircon is functioning, or you have a fan at least close by. It'd be interesting if your cats are slumbering through the day. See if you can verify that little study I mentioned a couple of days ago with the majority of cats sleeping on their left-hand side to allow their right eye to have unobstructed views, which will communicate with the left-hand hemisphere of the brain, which is more in tune with spatial awareness and visual acuity and predator avoidance and things. Leopard Lover, you're asking what birds we can hear. At the moment, I can't hear any birds, but I can hear elephants splashing around in the water. I would also have to say that my knowledge of Kenyan birds is not wonderful, so I would be tentative to share too much, but let me just turn my volume up a bit and see if I can hear anything in the background. Sounded like Franklin type call in the background I heard then. Sure, we'll probably hear some barefaced go-away birds. You could hear doves in flight. Now I've got the volume turned up, it's rather difficult to hear anything above the splish splashing and the sucking of water by the elephants, but if I hear any I recognise, I will share. Venus, you're asking if any of these will be brothers. Very difficult to know, Venus, to be honest. There are very strong bonds between male elephants that don't necessarily have to be brothers. But we saw a couple here the other day that were sharing that pipe in a sort of unusually sedate manner, which led me to think that they could have been brothers. They could have come from the same natal herd and not necessarily stayed together their whole lives. I've no doubt they would have gone off and explored, but probably would meet up relatively regularly. So I think without doing some sort of paternity test, it would be very difficult to know for sure, because a lot of these bachelor groups have been established for decades, and say the bonds between those individuals will be very, very strong, but a lot of the time male elephants do go wandering off and will be completely solitary for months on end and then rejoin with old friends. This gammy neat giraffe still hanging around. I'm hoping we're going to get a chance to see him have a drink. I'll be interested to know how he deals with that. Tracy, as you said, the giraffe's nervously waiting its turn. Agreed. I think especially if your leg is a little compromised, maybe don't take the risk at the moment. I wouldn't want to have to pivot very quickly on that leg if I was the giraffe. Leopard Lover, I'm listening for birds, but I say I'm struggling over the noise of the elephants having their drink, because the occasional note that sounds like a chin spot basis call, but again, I'm not sure whether they get the same ones that we get down here. Dark Mane Lover, I'm sure people are keeping an eye on the potentially sort of big tuskers that are around at the moment. I know there is documentation of them, and there are some sort of well-known big tuskers within the Kruger area. I couldn't give you the facts and figures off the top of my head. I saw one in the park the other day that had a very impressive set of tusks. I'm not sure if there is a particular estimated weight or length that a tusk needs to be before it is considered a big tusker as such. But I know people do keep fairly good records of those that are seen. I was at the Letaba Elephant Museum recently and had a look through there and saw all of the original big tuskers. And interesting that the majority of them all seem to come from the northern part of the park. But I've seen a couple of larger ones further south as well. But I'm sure a quick check online would be able to find some relatively well-known individuals. Just having a quick look if I can find anything for you there on the Sandparks website with regards to the ones within the Kruger area. There is a list of them. There's quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there's about 25 or 30 names that are mentioned there. And you can go into each one if you go onto the Sandparks website and find out a bit more about them, the origins of their names, their range, special features, general information. Looks actually pretty comprehensive, the amount of information that one can find. And I've no doubt someone will have done the same for the Kenyan areas and the Tanzanian areas as well. Lucy Khudi, how far can elephants walk in search of food? A very, very long way, Lucy, I think is the answer. Again, impossible to give you an actual figure or a specific figure. Very much depends on how far they need to go, and what the environmental conditions are, and the obviously linked to the climatic conditions of where the vegetation is. But over a course of time, particularly these male elephants can roam thousands of kilometers over months and months. So the answer is a lot, but I don't think we can put a finite number on it. Ivan, you're saying what bush animal best soothes your frazzled nerves when you're upset? I've got an obvious answer in my head. I'm just trying to think if there's any others that would perhaps be a little bit more off the cuff. I mean, I think watching giraffe I find incredibly relaxing. They glide. I always describe them as nature's lava lamps. I'm sure those of you who are regular viewers have heard me call them that before. There is something just very appealing about watching them float across the savannah. Other things that always bring a smile to my face, which I suppose also unfrazzles nerves, is watching baboons. I particularly enjoy the little antics of dwarf mongoose. I think those are incredibly cute as well. Things I get, I was unusually excited about seeing the honey badger a couple of days ago. I just love the way they kind of prance and bounce when they trot through the bush. Whether I think that's more just sort of genuine enjoyment of something I don't see very often. But in terms of, say, soothing, I think it has to be the giraffe, really. But it'd be interesting to hear if anybody else has got any unique animals that they feel does the same thing. Jordan, I'm not sure if that's come from you and it's with what you've written there, but if so, you're saying grey herons hunting is soothing for you. It's certainly slow and deliberate. I can understand that, definitely. Mshanjiri, I hope I'm saying that right. You're asking how can a zebra stay without drinking water? Um, I assume you mean how long can a zebra go without drinking water? On average, maybe 2 or 3 days, but everything needs water. Um, you do find that in different species are better adapted, have slightly better, different digestive systems and the ability to extract moisture out of what they are eating. So those zebras that occur in more dry, arid areas, so the mountain zebras, the grevy's zebras, they can apparently go sort of 5 or 6 days without water. They can, and it also obviously depends on year. I'm assuming we're talking dry period here, but if there's any dew that forms on the vegetation, they would be able to lap that up. Um, in the western side of the country, you often sort of get fog and things, which leaves a nice film of water on the vegetation. But they may have to travel very large distances to find water. Pretty much everything requires water at some point. Ronnie Sue 313, the giant African land snail relaxes you. Oh, that's a good one. I wasn't expecting anyone to come up with one of those, but yes, they are rather good, aren't they? It's always fun when you have a land snail traffic jam, a roadblock. Wait for them to slowly slither across the road. This one trying to do a bit of tactile communication, which was somewhat rebuffed. I love if you're saying these things are very majestic. They are. It is lovely to see big groups of bulls here at Old Donyo. I always think how much brain power there is between them all. I think elephants can also be very relaxing, particularly when they're in this mood. I'm more respectful and vigilant around elephants than I used to be, just because I've seen what they're capable of. I've had a few run-ins with elephants over the years, and they are exceptionally intimidating. But when they are very docile like this, they can also be very relaxing. Look at the giraffe doing a little bit of gentle necking as well. Let's say very rhythmical. Absolutely no malice being shown there at all. Purely just interaction more than anything else. Bit of practice for when the time comes. But the queue of giraffe is definitely increasing. Not much they can do about the sort of 50 tons or so that's currently clustered around the waterhole. I'm guessing that noise that we could hear is the barefaced babblers, barefaced go-away birds. Munyo, you're asking which grows bigger, male or female elephants? Definitely male elephants. As is the case for many species, not all by any stretch, but the majority of species, the male will be larger than a female. A big elephant bull like this will be tipping the scales at somewhere between about 6 or 7 tons, whereas females will only get up to around the 4.5 ton range. So always exceptions to the rule. One that sort of obviously springs to mind is in raptors, where female raptors are always bigger than male raptors. And in other bird species that we call polyandrous, where females have multiple male mates throughout the year instead of the more common other way around. Those female birds, like the greater painted snipe, would be an example, generally a little bit bigger than the males. Think of many other mammals, though. I'm trying to think now if I could think of anywhere the females are bigger than the males, but almost always the males are bigger than the females. It's a sort of a sexual selection thing. It's fighting for dominance and extra power, particularly if you're defending a territory or defending a harem against others. Right, slight change of scenery down to Botswana and Elephant Pan, and another nice little herd enjoying a drink out of the little well there, the little inflow that feeds this dam. Amazing. I haven't seen this camera for a while. Amazing to see how much it's dried up. I remember seeing it in the middle of summer where it was just an ocean. A lot of those trees were submerged. Oh, the little one. Hello, youngster.
Join me, Andrew Wistenholm, for an indescribable 6-night stay in the beautiful Albany of the Eastern Cape at Amakhala Game Reserve. Now, this trip is going to be action-packed with a lot of storytelling, adventure, as well as the opportunity to make everlasting memories. We'll be exploring the best of Amakhala by staying at 2 luxury lodges, which will be the perfect blend of comfort as well as wilderness. Book your spot today and let's get ready to explore the wild beauty of Amakhala.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus.
Yaku!
And gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
Out here, every wild moment matters, and as a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel, ad-free 24/7, where you can even rewind and watch something again. Get access to behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and access to early travel offers. It is the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Eagle nest. I'm trying to remember how old this chick is now. I can't remember when it was born, but lovely to see how it's growing up. Full body of nice downy hair that we can see. Black eagles, now more commonly known as the Varroa eagle. Amazing nest. Talk about a safe place to grow up. Eh? Just suspended on the side of a cliff. You can see how high up they are by looking at the backdrop. And so, as is the case with raptors, generally only one chick will be raised through to adulthood, assuming they make it to that stage. Normally, raptors will lay 2, sometimes even 3 eggs, but almost always the other ones are considered insurance policies. And if the first one hatches, the second one, because it will hatch a lot later, or a week or so, or even if just 4 or 5 days later, will often just not get given the food. It will be out competed by the other one, or sometimes even the other one will kill the young one just to remove competition. Spectacular eagle. Someone was actually telling me they saw here in Hoedspruit, they saw a black eagle the other day, which is something I've never seen down here, but they do nest on cliffs, as you can clearly see here. And we do have the Little Drakensberg mountain range, which I can actually see from my window, though there's a annoying amount of cloud around in the sky. I'm supposed to be out this evening doing some stars, but that was the forecast. It should clear up by middle of the afternoon, crossing my fingers. I'm just checking on my app, but it does say for the Varro's eagle there that siblicide results in the death of about 99% of all second chicks. Giraffe are getting closer, but still thinking that maybe it's a bit too much of a risk. I'd be interested to see if our one with his dodgy leg is still there. But yeah, Lolly, back to your question. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'd necessarily use the word aggressive, although we could do, but as a general rule, if there are incidents between people and elephants, very often it is at the hands or the trunk or the knees of a cow as opposed to a bull, unless the bull happens to be in must. Generally, from a trails perspective, when learning to do the walking aspect of safari, we try and avoid breeding herds, whereas bulls on their own are a far more potentially manageable sighting. I think the one having a drink might be the one with the bad leg. Let's just see how he gets on. Shame there is some zebra butts in the way. Yes, go on, scare them off. It was him. Well, he moved all right there. He was able to have a drink, and when he had to spring back into action, seemed to be able to do so relatively well. Well, at least, even though we've only got about 15 minutes left or so now, we've got our answer. Yes, this giraffe is still able to get water. As we said, everything needs water. Yes, giraffes can go longer due to their more efficient digestive system and ability to extract water from what they're eating with their 4-chambered ruminant-based stomach. But they'll still take the opportunity to drink as and when they can. And good to know that he is still able to support his body weight on those legs. But very, very swollen. Interesting, much darker as well. Whether that's anything to do with blood flow in the area or just coincidental, but that whole left leg looks a lot darker than the right hand side.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
Do you want to know why impala are the most common antelope we find here in the Kruger National Park? You can ask me questions like this in real time. Our safaris are live and interactive here in the heart of Africa. Join me on Safari Live. Connect with nature.
Safari, wine, and waterfalls. The ultimate African adventure. Sip South Africa's finest wines. Experience a world-class safari among Africa's iconic wildlife. And stand in front of Victoria Falls, one of the natural wonders of the world. All this can be yours with Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
Interesting one on the other side, maybe in the doghouse, but possibly a young male just distancing himself from the rest of the family, showing a little bit of independence. Here, a pearl-spotted owlet trilling away in the background. Oh, what a little one. Hello, the youngster. Baby elephants, always fun. Tall spurfowls calling. Sounds like virtual starlings calling. Jive Bunny, you're also enjoying the cute little baby elephant? Absolutely. So he got his drinking technique down pretty well. Doesn't look quite as natural and as comfortable as the adults. That will come in time. It does take a few years to master the control of all of those muscles in the trunk, all 40 to 60,000 of those little interconnected muscles that give it such 360-degree motion. It does take a little bit of practice, a little bit of cognitive processing power to keep it under control. So always amusing to see a young elephant trying to learn how to use his trunk and getting very frustrated when it doesn't do what he wants it to do. Oh, missed the mouth a little bit there. Size difference between these two. But again, the fact that they are seemingly happily sharing that pipe suggests these two have a history. We can't see anything now, of course, but those two have a history, I would think. I'm not sure if that's a little wound on this elephant's backside. Possibly got a tusk in the rump by another elephant there. Definitely a close bond. See the way the younger one is leaning up against the older one. Well, we are down to the last 90 seconds or so. Darkmane Lover thanking everybody, the Wild Earth team, the African team, the Zoomies, myself, Jordan and Nadine, who've been assisting. Glad you felt it's been a fantastic live at the Waterhole show. It always is. Nature always delivers. And likewise to you, Darkmane Lover. Enjoy your day. Definitely a long history. Where the trunk just communicating, popping the trunk into the other one's mouth. Interesting with the size difference and the age difference, how this relationship has come about. Whether there is some shared genetics there, we won't know. But how beautiful is that? Right, well, we're down to the last 25 seconds or so, everybody, so we'll leave you with this beautiful sort of mirror image of elephants. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you for all your questions and comments and whatever you choose to do with the rest of your day. I hope it is both wonderful and fueled with these wonderful views. But thanks, everybody. We will see you next time.
Welcome to Safari Spotlight. Come with us as we discover some of South Africa's most wild places, the Lowveld, the Eastern Cape and the Waterberg. We'll track and hopefully find some wonderful wildlife while basking in the magnificence of these landscapes, all filled with a sense of African wonder. If you like what you see on Safari Spotlight, you can visit these wild and special places by visiting